Hello and welcome to the Nature Disturbed podcast, a podcast about the good, the offensive and the confusing parts of the animal kingdom. This podcast was recorded on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present. This episode contains strong language and adult themes. This episode marks episode 10 of the first season, Wet and Wild. According to my calculations, that places us beyond halfway through this season. Hooray! Big snogs for everyone. If you've been here since the start, thanks a million. Your ongoing support really does enrage me. Encourage me. Sorry, I'm reading from a script. And if you're new here, the Nature Disturbed podcast is a science podcast, yes, but it's also a cult. Adult. It's an adult podcast. Sorry, I've done it again. I've lost my reading glasses. But no matter if you're new, or if you've been here since episode 1 when we headed down to the Mariana Trench together, I just wanted to say a big fuck off. Thank you. A big thank you. Gosh, my eyesight's awful. I don't even know how I got that so wrong. You know what? This script isn't working for me today, so I'm just going to wing it. I'm sat in my kitchen sink, and as for my outfit today, well, outfit is a strong word. I wanted to feel the amphibian fantasy. After ordering 10 litres of slime from a Sensory Play online store, I have completely covered my body and filled my sink. So my outfit today, I suppose you could describe it as a thick slick of ASMR goo, which honestly feels great. Ooh, very slippery. Now then, amphibians. Who are they? Why are they so slimy? And what do they want from us? Here's a quote from H.P. Lovecraft's 1917 short story, Dagon. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage to some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. This invokes today's subject, for the giant salamander, living in its rocky water world, reaches sizes that do justify its comparison to a human. We might look at a frog or a newt and feel more distant from them than from any other land vertebrate. We may look at a lizard and at least be able to relate to the fact that its skin isn't dripping with goo, not including myself right now. We may look into the eye of a magpie, and from the tilt of its head and the twinkle in its eye, recognise without much doubt that it's up to no good. And when we look at the face of a mammal, like a hungry cat or an excited dog, we often know exactly what it's thinking. But amphibians, I'll admit it, they're hard to read. And that's really saying something coming from me because, I'm an empath. I feel everyone's emotions really intensely. Thank you, guys. But here's a strange thought. We were amphibians once. As hard as they might be to relate to, we all came from amphibians. You, me, our grandparents, the Pope, every single one of the Spice Girls, apart from perhaps Victoria. If you go back way past our primate ancestors, and way before we were small rodent-like creatures scurrying beneath the feet of the dinosaurs, and you head to what's now North Canada during the Devonian period, around 375 million years ago, then you'll come to the time of Tiktaalik. Tiktaalik! Which is a great name. Tiktaalik was a primitive fish, and an important transition fossil, from swimming fish to four-legged vertebrates. Once Tiktaalik bravely crawled out of the water and onto land, there was no going back. Dry land offered all sorts of amenities that just couldn't be found in the water, like Greggs and Primark. What does the sea have? Salt? Sharks? Yeah, no thanks. It's no surprise Tiktaalik wanted out. And what resulted was the evolution of the tetrapods, named from the ancient Greek words for four and foot, so four-footed. Despite the name, the group includes all living amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, so the word tetrapod is still applied to the descendants of these who no longer have all their limbs, such as kiwi birds, snakes, whales, or me when I'm writhing around on my floor with my limbs duct taped to my body. The earliest of the tetrapods to appear were the amphibians, a group of animals which are typically semi-aquatic and which undergo a metamorphosis from an aquatic larval stage with gills to an adult with lungs. Usually, not always. Of course, nature is full of exceptions. Unlike reptiles, which evolved later, which are amniotes, amphibian eggs lack a protective shell, and they must remain wet. Amphibians are therefore reproductively tied to the water. This worked very well for them in the humid, swampy world of the Devonian, shortly after Tiktaalik crawled out of the seas. And with all the available space and opportunity provided by their newfound home of land, their evolutionary journey ran wild. They diversified, spread into a range of niches, took on a variety of forms. Oh, I keep slipping in the goo. And some of them became huge. The temnospondyls, a now extinct group of amphibians, pushed the amphibian body plan to its extreme. One member of the order, Prionosuchus, lived in what is now northeastern Brazil, just under 300 million years ago. This ancient amphibian had a long snout and jaws like a crocodile, with many sharp teeth, and may have grown well over 5 meters in length. Jesus fuck! Some giant amphibians also spent much of their time on land, like Eriops, a predator that looked a bit like a short, fat crocodile had a baby with a giant frog. It had curved, blade-like teeth, and it was one of the largest terrestrial animals of its time, weighing up to 220 kilos. That's the weight of a very large lion, or, if you prefer to measure against gerbils, it's the same as 3,171 gerbils. Which begs the question, would you rather fight one gerbil-sized gerbil or 3,171 lion-sized lions? Whatever your answer, let me somehow or other bring this back to giant amphibians. I refuse to be sidetracked. The group of giant amphibians named the temnospondyls thrived well into the age of the dinosaurs, spanning a great dynasty lasting 200 million years and ending with the final bastion of this great lineage, the revered, the spectacular, the great Goliath that was Coolosuchus, the fossil emblem of the Australian state of Victoria, and famed in some circles for its appearance in episode 5 of BBC's Walking with Dinosaurs, Spirits of the Ice Forest. This beast looked like a 5-metre-long salamander. Allow me to emphasise that it wasn't a salamander, but that description might help you imagine the kind of animal Coolosuchus was. It was a predator which probably ate small dinosaurs like Leolinosaura. Quick question, why was Coolosuchus named Coolosuchus? Was it A, named in honour of Leslie Cool, the Australian paleontologist who played a key role in the discovery and preparation of the species? Was it B, named after the fact that it lived in polar conditions back when Australia was closer to the South Pole? C, was it named after the fact that it's objectively very cool? Or D, horse? Well, the answer's A. It was named in honour of Leslie Cool, but it did inhabit polar regions, and it is cool. And also, horse, because why not? Alas, Coolosuchus, the giant amphibious predator of the frozen deep past, was the last of its kind. A warming climate meant that crocodilians, unable to withstand cold temperatures, were able to mince their way onto the scene and outcompete Coolosuchus. Now, that was a rather long introduction, but I wanted to give you the long and short of giant amphibians living on our planet. And once I started talking about prehistory, I couldn't stop. Here's the good news. Although the temnospondyls went extinct, amphibians as a whole didn't. And rest assured, you won't be disappointed to hear about some of the giant amphibians we still have living on our planet today. Perhaps first recalibrate what you think of when you imagine an amphibian. Something the size of a tadpole, or the smallest twig-like newt hiding in a pond among the lily fronds, or a little frog that you could balance on the end of your finger. The tiniest amphibian of them all, the world's smallest vertebrate, the Brazilian flea toad, which is about 7 millimeters long. Other than the fact that they're fun to think about, why should we care? Well, the decline in amphibian populations is one of the greatest threats to global biodiversity. They are the most vulnerable class of vertebrates. So now I will hand you back to my past self. I visited Western Japan to meet Dr. Mizuki Takahashi to learn more about the biology and conservation of these incredible animals, and hopefully to find a giant salamander, a mascot of Japanese wildlife, and an emblem of this long surviving lineage. Well, hello everyone. How are ya? I'm meandering along a footpath through the forested mountain slopes of western Japan. There's a soft mist rising through the trees, the emerald canopy opening above me here and there to let the sun's rays illuminate my way. I'm making my way to a mountain stream. By following the faint trickling sound, ever so gently, it beckons me through the forest. I walked here from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm very pleased to be here right now on the correct path, partly because it's so tranquil in this forest, but also because bloody Google Maps took me first to Japan, Pennsylvania. I suppose it's my own fault for not checking I put the right Japan in, but surely it should have known. Anyway, no harm done. I had time to think along the detour, and what I decided was I'd speak more about the fossil record. Sorry about it, at least we're in the home straight now, because what I'd like to tell you is about fossils of the giant salamander, genus Andrias, the genus to which today's subject, the Japanese giant salamander, belongs. When fossils of this group were described in the 1700s, they were believed to be the remains of humans who had survived the Great Biblical Flood. Their genus name, Andrias, meaning in the image of man, honours that misidentification. They belong to the family Cryptobranchidae, and although some members of this lineage exist only in fossil form, some of them remain very much alive. There's a single species living in North America, but they live primarily in East Asia, and include various species of Chinese giant salamander and the Japanese giant salamander. Whereas most amphibians undergo a metamorphosis in which they go on to become partially land-dwelling, giant salamanders remain fully aquatic. Lungs develop, but they're used mainly for buoyancy. Although they're fully aquatic, they're shit swimmers, and they crawl along the floor with their short limbs. They're well camouflaged, and they look very much like rocks. The flat bodies of giant salamanders offer little water resistance, an adaptation to the constant flowing water of their river and stream environments. And speaking of streams, I seem to have found one. Let me make my way over and see if I can spot a salamander. Oh, and by the way, a salamander is simply a group of amphibians characterised by their round snouts, long bodies, 4 short legs which stick out at right angles, and the presence of tails into adulthood. Giant salamanders are predators, though their vision is just as shit as their swimming, no offence. They are able to detect prey using a lateral line, which is an organ running along the side of their bodies, which can detect vibrations, water disturbance, and water flow along the body, which helps them detect prey items such as fish. The Chinese giant salamander is the largest of them all, and it's the largest living amphibian. It can reach a length of 180 centimetres. That's 2 centimetres taller than I am, although given that I never reveal my face and body, perhaps that's not a very helpful metric. Okay, it's 2 centimetres taller than Taylor Swift, and she's famously quite tall. They also weigh up to 50 kilos, the equivalent of 500 gerbils. Here's another one. Would you rather fight 6 million lion-sized gerbils or one Swiftie online? Oh, I'm not sure. This is all getting very confusing. I believe in rolling around in slime, not fighting, but either way, I would choose the lion-sized gerbils. In China, the giant salamander's name means infant fish, because they produce the most unusual, unsettling yelps and shrieks which sound very much like the cries of a small child. In Japan, the giant salamander is known by locals as the giant pepperfish. That's because when it feels very attacked, it excretes a white fluid that smells like Japanese peppers. I'm not sure what's worse, being covered in milky peppery fluid or the cries of a screaming child. Would you rather? Actually, no more would you rathers. The Japanese giant salamander is smaller than its Chinese counterparts, but let me tell you, it's still very big. It can reach up to 1.5 meters in length and weigh up to 25 kilos. And would you believe it? Over there in the stream, I've actually found one. Let me go and sit next to it. Now, to the untrained eye, it might look a lot like a long, grey, boring rock, but to me, an expert, it's clear that I'm looking at Andreas japonicus, the Japanese giant salamander. I can see that it's covered in tubercles, and it has lots of folded skin running down its side. These features are thought to increase surface area, to help them absorb oxygen through the skin. But they also help camouflage this animal, and help it look like a very convincing rock. But you couldn't fool me. I'm too good. Oh, wait. Hang on a minute. I think it is a rock. Yeah, it's a rock. Oh right, well, it was boring anyway. Whatever. What time is it? Let me check my watch. Oh, drat. I'm supposed to be meeting Dr. Takahashi in 1 minute. All the way down there, kilometers down the mountain. It'll take me hours and I've only got 1 minute. Oh no, I'm gonna miss him. Oh no, I'm freaking out. How will I get down?
Hello.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, Mizuki, it's great to run into you here in the mountains of Western Japan,
Yep.
in a mysterious hillside. Uh,
Sounds good.
yeah, thanks for meeting me. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm certainly looking forward to finding out more about these really mysterious creatures that feel like relics of the past.
Right.
So I'm curious to know, you are
hmm
Associate Professor of Biology and Animal Behavior at Bucknell University, and you head up a lab in your own name, which looks at ecology, ethology, which is behavior, conservation of amphibians and reptiles, and you've come to focus on giant salamanders. How did you end up here?
Well, yeah, people ask me why I like amphibians because a lot of people don't find amphibians to be cool enough to study. But a lot of people studied mammals and birds, and conservation effort has been paid to those species over amphibians or other species that are not appealing enough, or people think they don't have enough values for human consumption or use. But I grew up sort of picking up, collecting fossils. Those are, like shellfish, not that, dinosaurs or mammoths or anything cool, but, picking up little bits of stones and, shell-shaped
Yeah.
things. And then I became interested in dinosaurs. And then I became interested in somehow evolution of fish into amphibians. And I think I was like a first or second grader when I learned that amphibians came from fish, which shocked me. And then I met coelacanth, which back then people thought that that's the sort of precursor to amphibians, which is not true. We know that now, but back then at least people thought that's the sort of the ancient amphibian precursor. And then I read the book about how they became like a Acanthostega, Ichthyostega. Those are the first amphibians. They're the tetrapods. They have limbs and they can stay on land. And the book talked about how fish has gained limbs and lungs and became amphibians, and which was just so fascinating to me. And eventually that became, fascination for salamanders.
You saying that fossils were your gateway to giant salamanders is that really makes a lot of sense. I have seen them be described as living fossils, and they've got a really long history
Mhm.
on this planet. They do look really prehistoric.
They do. They really do. Yeah, they
Yeah.
look really, really cool.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
it surprises a lot of people that they actually exist at all. It's like a bit of a shocking moment to know that we're currently sharing the planet with something that feels like it's been gone for millions of
Right.
years. Yeah.
Yep.
So I suppose my first question is why are they so big? How? Why?
I guess so. Based on the fossil records, amphibians started with really large size. So the largest amphibians recorded was like close to 9 meter in the past.
Oh my
That's
God.
like, the 200 million years ago, 300 million years ago, like really ancient amphibians. They became really huge, and they are ones of the top predators on land. And then for some reason, most of amphibians that survived through mass extinctions and going through evolution, they became smaller. So they did not really become big, but they remained large size, while other amphibians became somehow small.
Okay, so I think that the largest current amphibian is that the Chinese giant salamander,
Giant, yeah, Chinese giant. That's right.
1.8 meters. Uh,
Something like that. The largest recorded, right, Chinese giant is like 1.8 meter, right? Around that range.
the size of a tall man. So, what are some of the adaptations that they have to live in the environments that they live in? Because I associate amphibians with quite warm, hot areas, but I don't think that they always do live in them, do they?
So frogs tend to be adapted to tropical range. If you look at the species distribution, there are so many more frog species in tropical rainforest than the rest of the world. But if you look at salamander distribution range, they are mostly focused on temperate zone, not the tropical zone. There are some amphibians that are salamanders living in tropical zone, but diversification has happened mostly in temperate, little colder region. In fact, Japanese giant salamanders, one of the conditions for their survivorship is cold water because cold water contains more dissolved oxygen, and they do intake oxygen through cutaneous respiration, which is skin breathing. They do have lungs, but also they can take oxygen through skin, which means if the water temperature is warm, dissolved oxygen decreases and their breathing becomes more difficult. So climate change is one of the biggest threats to all the giant salamanders living in Japan, China, and also North America. So they like colder environment.
Mm, yeah. Wow. Okay.
Mm.
The North American variety being the Hellbender,
That's right, exactly.
which
Yeah.
has got to be one of the best names in nature.
Yeah, I don't know how the name, was picked, but yeah.
I think that it's because of how ugly they are, which seems quite cruel.
Okay. Yeah, they're really cool. But I know people used to afraid of them. People thought they're venomous and they bite you and they eat fish, and people depicted hellbenders as enemies of mankind.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the outlook that we need to have in order to keep them around, I don't think.
Now, now people know that's not true, but right.
Yeah. So from the photos that I've seen and footage, and you've of course seen them in real life, they look a lot like rocks. I'm curious to know how you're able to study them in the wild. Is it difficult to do that?
Well, so once you develop your sort of search image, you can pick them up pretty easily. But we tend to think rocks are giant salamanders
Hmm.
instead of, giant salamanders rock because we really focus on looking for them and they do look like rocks. So oftentimes, let's say, looking for giant salamanders from the bridge and some of the rocks look like giant salamanders. So we tend to make mistakes more often by thinking rocks are giant salamanders than giant salamanders rocks.
Okay, so
But they do
so
look similar. They
yeah,
blended. Yeah.
so you're able to find them somehow.
Yeah. I mean, we do night survey.
They're
So
nocturnal, aren't they?
flashlight, headlight, yeah, at night, and you can miss them. I mean, to those who study giant salamanders, they just look so cool. And once you find them, and once you go through the excitement of finding them, your search image is there, and it's hard to miss them.
Hmm.
Hmm.
You are from Japan, aren't you? So you grew up
Hmm.
there. Do you remember the
Yeah.
first time you saw one?
The first one I saw one was in captivity because I grew up in Tokyo. We don't have we don't have wild giant salamanders here. So I went to the amphibian zoo in Tochigi Prefecture back then when I was college, and I saw one, and I think that one was a Chinese giant, not even Japanese giant. And then I think when I was 27 or 8, for the first time, I get to see them in the wild.
Nice. I'm sure that was a wonderful experience.
It's been a long time dream for me to see them in the wild habitat. So yeah, that was really exciting.
So when you are able to catch a glimpse of them, which it sounds like it's not too difficult for you now, you look as an ethologist, I guess, a lot at their behavior, and there's been work in your lab on their parenting strategies.
Parental care behavior, right?
Hmm. I've heard
Hmm.
the males be described as den masters.
Hmm. Yeah,
Could you tell me a bit about their reproduction and their parenting strategies and how you
right.
research that, please?
So, people would be surprised to know that most salamanders do internal fertilization, which means females pick up sperm from male, and then fertilization happen internally to her body. But giant salamanders are ones of rare type of salamanders in which fertilization happen externally, outside of their body, just like fish. So female lay eggs and then male spray sperm and then fertilization happen in the water column,
Hmm.
right? Those species that do external fertilization, males tend to provide parental care. Many fish do that.
Okay.
So that's the reason why giant salamander males tend to provide, I mean, they do provide a parental care, which is rare. And while most amphibians don't provide parental care, when they do in salamanders, females tend to provide parental care because they do internal fertilization. But in a species like giant salamanders, where fertilization happens externally, males tend to provide parental care. So during the breeding season, larger males, we call them den masters. They find suitable nesting sites and they fight against each other to occupy some of the best nesting sites. And then, of course, other males challenge den masters. They try to steal nesting site from each other. And then den master fight, and often injury happens. We've seen so many individuals missing fingers or limbs. You see the bite marks on the head or belly, tails are missing, all kinds of injuries. We actually studied injuries too. But anyway, so males fight against each other to protect nesting site, which happens in late July and August. And then
Ooh.
at the end of August or beginning of September, breeding typically happens by females visiting nesting site. and then they must start accepting female into those sort of the cave-looking structure along the stream bank. And
Those fights,
then,
sorry, those
mhm.
fights must be pretty epic.
Yeah, I actually have never seen them fighting against each other because very rare to see them in the wild. But yeah, based on the injuries. And then there's some footage of other people filming their fighting, but they do fight fiercely. And
Yeah.
males tend to have more injuries than females, as you would imagine.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So female comes to the nesting site, which we call den. And then male would be happy to accept her. And then she and he goes around and doing sort of mating ritual, and eventually female release eggs, and then male spray or release sperm and fertilization happen within the nesting site or den. But when that happened, other males that are sort of, watching den also come in and join the breeding bowl, and then mating happens, often one female and multiple males.
Okay, lucky her.
Yeah, I guess, right.
So, how come external fertilization leads often to male parental care?
Yeah. So male becomes associated with mating ground, which is nesting site. And then egg laying and breeding happens within the nesting site. The male continues to stay in the nesting site with eggs. So scientists think nest guarding or egg guarding is secondary to guarding nesting site because more females can visit the same nesting site. And the den master may be able to mate with multiple females by guarding his den.
He's guarding the den first and foremost.
That's right. And then when mating finishes, females leave, and then eggs are there. And those males that provided parental care had better hatching success and survivorship of offspring, which means natural selection favored parental care over other males that did not provide parental care. So probably parental care by male happens after the nest guarding behavior or tendency.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's so interesting. So he's accidentally being a good dad because he's looking after his home.
That's right. That's right.
That's funny. So do these animals, I mean, surely they're so mysterious and impressive, have much cultural symbolism? Do people in Japan relate to them? Or I don't know if relate's the right word, but how do people feel
Yeah.
about them?
Yeah. So historically, um, Japanese people used to eat them. So that's one sort of cultural connection to the species. And even now, when we do research into that in the rural area, older folks tell me, they used to eat, they used to catch and eat, and they're tasty. And often those mountain areas don't have access to the ocean, fish. So they are dependent on protein that comes from the river. And giant salamanders, being large size, provided important protein sources for the villagers. So that's one sort of cultural connection to the species. And also, there is one shrine in Okayama Prefecture that worship giant salamanders, which is really cool because according to the myth, young villager, dived into the stream and killed huge giant salamander. For whatever the reason, I forgot. I probably, he wanted to show off how strong he was. And then I guess karma came back to him and his family, and they started suffering diseases and they started dying. So the villagers were afraid of the spirit of killed giant salamander, and then they decided to build the shrine. So there's a little mythical story there and, cultural symbol of giant salamander. So whenever we have a chance to drive around that area, my friend and I always stop at the shrine and pray for the spirit of the species. Other than that, I think nowadays people know about giant salamanders because it's been a protected species. And with the size, it's hard to ignore the species. So it does have a lot of cultural connection between Japanese people and the species.
Mm, I'm happy about that. It sounds like people connect with nature. I don't know if that's true for everyone, but I was curious to know if having
Mhm.
lived in the US and in Japan, if you found that
Yeah.
there is a difference in how people relate to the environment.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm not a expert in that field, but certainly I've been interested in how people's perception changes, maybe depending on religion. Japanese people, nowadays they don't like most of us don't have religions. The foundation is there to be Shintoism and Buddhism, and especially Shintoism belief. Um, we used to think each species or entity of natural objects um, have a god. For example, like a god of trees and rocks and mountains and oceans and foxes and deer and bears and all those species. So with that sort of Shintoism concept, people, at least, in theory, used to respect. And maybe we still carry that sort of notion of we need to respect each species because they are equal to us. But that's the Shintoism, like really basic, simple explanation. And human representation is Japanese emperor family, right? So we have representation. That's the emperor. That's why emperor became emperor. And just like we have emperors, other species and other natural entities have their own representations, and we need to respect each other at the equal ground. So that's Japanese Shintoism. And Christianity, of course, I'm not a Christian, so I shouldn't be speaking for them. But as long as I understand, Bible says God gave humans a right to manage and control the nature.
Mm,
So which could be interpreted as like we have to be equal to nature, or we have right, we have our status is above nature. We get to control nature. If that's the case, interaction between humans and nature can be very different from Shinto-based interaction between humans and nature. That said, a lot of Japanese people lost connection to nature, though. It's sad. It's a global issue as we live in cities and we are so isolated from nature. And our connection is through TV and zoos and aquariums, and that's how most Japanese people know nature.
mm,
And I think it's pretty, you know, global in developed countries.
yeah. Tokyo's the biggest city on the planet, isn't it? So how do people is there much nature in Tokyo?
Not much at all. It's all buildings and houses, and it's very suffocating. I
Mm,
grew up in Tokyo, suburb of Tokyo, and I didn't want to live in Tokyo, and I still don't want to live in Tokyo.
mm. Okay, that's interesting. Um, I I really was wondering what you thought about why not everyone knows about giant salamanders. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because they they seem like they should be a highlight of, children's natural history books. I'm surprised that they aren't more famous.
Yeah. Well, in Japan at least, they are pretty well known. And we have some children's books about the species, and there has been a lot of TV shows about the species. So, I mean, at least most people know the presence of the species. I don't think people know the environmental and conservation challenges that the species is facing, but at least they know we have that species.
Mm.
Outside of Japan, I think in America, people really don't know about hellbenders. In China, I don't know. I mean, Chinese people eat them, still eat the species.
Mm,
And it seems that's the main connection between people and the species in China.
right.
Um, yeah, the why people don't know about the species, I guess, um, again, it's not mammals. People love mammals because we are mammals. We have, closer relationship to mammals. We tend to understand what mammals are doing and wanting, and,
Yeah.
we can sort of read their minds.
Yeah.
At least we think so. And amphibians are pretty far from mammals, and it's hard to be sympathetic to the species that have very different life history. That might be one of the reasons, and they are very secretive. They live in the water, they hide, like you said, they blend into rocks. They're not really fancy, cute looking species.
Mm. I'm wondering about their conservation.
Yeah.
Has there been any success and what still needs to be done? And also, how can the protection of this one species help conserve more than just that in the form of a whole
Yeah.
ecosystem?
So Japanese Agency of Education designated species as special natural monument, which gives them the highest protection. However, the government hasn't provided any funding or any conservation efforts to protect the species, which is surprising. What is the point of designating species when they don't even make effort to protect the species,
Mm,
which has been really frustrating for people who care about the species. So mostly conservation is done by volunteers like us. Like we didn't get paid by the government or didn't get paid by anyone, but we do it because we care about the species. And there is Japanese Giant Salamander Association in Japan, which has, I don't know how many membership, but quite a big, maybe 200, 300 membership. And there are some researchers, volunteer researchers, and they do basic research in different parts of Japan to monitor the population. So that has been successful. Again, it's not a government initiated, so which is not ideal, but at least we have enough lay people or volunteers who care enough about the species and spend our own resources to monitor the species.
mm,
Yeah, the second part of your connection is beyond the species, right? So I think most of us know that the goal of protecting species is to protect the habitat, because without habitat protection, species cannot exist unless we keep them in captivity, but which is not how we want to conserve species. So by protecting their species, their habitat, of course, we can protect other species. For example, fish, because giant salamanders eat fish, and then freshwater crab. And those species need to be there for giant salamander to sustain their population. So protecting habitat means not only protecting giant salamander, but also protecting every other species that exist in river ecosystem.
do they have a large range, or as in one individual, would he have a big territory or not?
That's a great question. The answer is like no one knows because Japanese rivers are so fragmented by dams. So we don't even know how naturally they move because they can't move. There are dams
Mm,
preventing them from moving naturally, which is very sad. And that, to me, that's one of the biggest conservation challenges, dams and also concrete banking.
mm,
With concrete banking, males cannot find nesting site. Again, nesting sites are natural cave-ish structure along the riverbank. And when we convert natural riverbank into concrete riverbank, which deprives all the species from the species. So they do lose breeding ground.
Yeah. So there's an element of mystery because they're living in a man-made world now.
That's right. Yeah, so we don't even know how they naturally move. And one of the research questions I want to answer to promote conservation is how they migrate between tributaries and main stem. Because individuals living in tributaries, they are smaller. They are much smaller. They're adults, but much smaller in body size. But the ones living in the main stem, they tend to be larger. So I wonder if they grow large size and then they move to main stem to even, become larger, or do they stay in the tributary and stay as small body size adults? Like we don't know. There is some evidence suggesting they do migrate, but we don't really have a data showing most of individuals growing up in tributaries, they hit certain body size and then they migrate to tributary, the main stem, and they gain, even greater body size. That's the story that's the hypothesis I'm testing, but we don't have the data to test the hypothesis.
Mm. How do you plan on finding that out?
Yeah, yeah. So we need to find a good habitat where tributaries are naturally connected to main stem. That's one challenge, right? As I said, there are so many dams chopping the streams into small sections, and often tributaries are segregated from main stem. So we need to find that habitat, and then when we find them, we need to microchip many individuals living in both tributaries and main stem. And then we need to do, market recapture, going back to the stream and then catching again and see what they move and what they, find, what they find every time. And also we have, the company developed this microchip reader. Microchip, we need to catch them when we need to scan them because
Mm.
it's a passive integrated responder. Like, they don't really emit signals. So we need to catch them and then scan them. But we have this antenna that you can set up underneath of the stream. It's like like a cord
Mm.
across the stream. And then when animals cross the cord can read a chip,
Oh, wow.
right? So you know which individual crossed that rope and when. And if
That's
we
so
can
smart.
install those things in the different locations of streams, tributaries, and main stem, we should be able to understand how they migrate.
It reminds me of those little wires that cross streets to monitor how people are obeying the speed limit or not.
Hmm. Fish people do that. Fish, like let's say salmon migration, people be interested in their migration because they breed upstream of the river and they come back to the ocean. So that system has been developed for fish. And again, fish is human resource. I mean, not
Mm.
human resource, but resources for humans. Like we do eat them. So there is a money and there is a research done to protect fish and to understand the fish migration, but not for giant salamanders because, again, there is no economic value to that
No.
species.
Am I right in thinking that there has been a reintroduction, or I should not say reintroduction, an introduction of Chinese giant salamanders into Japan? And how has that
Yes.
affected the native population?
Yeah. So as far as I know, based on news articles and other articles that I've read, businessmen in Okayama imported a ton of Chinese giant salamanders back in, let's say, like 1970 some years. So it's been like 50 years ago. It's been 50 years since importation happened. And then somehow business didn't fly. My sort of memory is that they wanted to sell those to restaurants. because Japanese giant salamanders has been protected, which means we can't catch them and sell them and eat them. But if they come from China, it's okay,
Mm.
according to the law. But um, Japanese people are not, I guess, interested in eating the species, or maybe are afraid of eating native species because once it's cooked, you can't really tell which one is which. Anyway, the business didn't fly. So the businessman decided to release them into Japanese rivers. And people really didn't think hybridization can happen because there are different species. And according to species concept, the biological species concept, species is a group of individuals that do not interbreed. So usually different species do not interbreed. The Chinese giant salamanders and Japanese giant salamanders were able to interbreed and they started producing hybrids. Then that has become another um, serious, serious threat to the species. It has been spreading and has been found in many different prefectures by now. And most likely people move them from one watershed to another. And that's how hybrids spread. And then they started breeding with that native species and producing not only F1 but also F2 with through backcrossing with Japanese individuals. So it could be, roughly speaking, 75% Japanese blood and then 25% Chinese blood, but still those are hybrids. And if they do backcrossing over and over with Japanese, some of those individuals are almost all Japanese giant, but very tiny bit of Chinese giant salamander genes comprising of the individual.
Mm.
And the question is, do we want to still remove them by saying these are hybrids? And I think what the government decided and other experts decided is to remove all those individuals that has any tiny bit of Chinese giant salamander genes.
So that means that they're capable of producing fertile offspring.
That's right.
Right, okay. So that's another
Mhm.
challenge. Um, so what does the in your opinion, the future look like for giant salamanders? It seems like, dare I say, that in Japan at least, despite all of these threats, there's been something of a success story. Is that too
Well,
far?
I'm not optimistic about the future of the
Mm.
species, to be honest. Well, so habitat degradation, concrete banking, and dams. We need to install salamander ladders so that they can migrate. Um, and then climate change is making the situation even worse because we have severe rain events more often, and then floods happen more often, which means those rain events can wash salamanders to downstream. And then because of dams and weirs, they cannot go back to their original habitat, right? So again, it's important to install government, the federal government and prefectural government, city government, they should install salamander ladders so that animals can move freely. And also, I guess one, good material is that Japan is suffering population decline. We are losing a lot of people in the rural area. So some of those rural area, will go extinct. We don't, those villages and rural towns will go extinct. And when that happens, we can bring those rivers back to the natural state by destroying dams and weirs and concrete banks. And that's what we need to do. That's my opinion.
And that's it. I feel like you don't hear very often about the benefits of declining population, but well, there's one.
I mean, again, as an ecologist, we have too many people in Japan.
Mm.
125 million people in a small island, smaller than California. California has 40 million people. We have 125 million. And California is one of the more denser states, in America. We just
Mm.
have too many people.
Yeah. I'm from England and I feel like we're in a similar
Mm,
position. There's a lot of people on a small island,
right,
not much room for nature.
right.
I don't want to keep you for too much longer. So, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah. Um, if folks who are listening to your radio show are interested in conservation or even coming to Japan to watch them, you can contact me through my email, which is on the university website. And in fact, I get contact from random people who are interested in seeing the species, because seeing the species is the first step toward conservation of the species. And I have a good connection to the location where people are welcoming foreigners, and they can take them to the site and they can explain the conservation issues and life history and how the town is valuing the species. So that's one thing I can see that can promote conservation by the listeners of your program.
Great. And I can share those details for you as well if you'd like. And also, I feel like I would like to take you up on that offer. I'd love to visit
Yeah,
Japan one day and to see them would be amazing.
that would be great. You should contact me.
Yeah, I will.
I can
Yeah.
arrange a trip.
Nice. Okay, perfect. Enjoy the rest of your day. Mizuki, thank you for speaking with me. It's been wonderful. I think that I left my laundry on, so I actually need to go back and sort that out, if you'll excuse me. Thank
Yeah, see
you.
you.
See ya.
Thanks for having me.
Well, here we are, once again, in my kitchen sink. The goo will be sorely missed. I think I'll have to do another amphibian episode. What have we learned? Here's a quick summary. Amphibians are an ancient group of animals, and we owe them all our lives. There once was a time when giant amphibians marched, swam, crawled, and squatted across our planet. Today, giant amphibians can still be found in our fresh water, in the form of giant salamanders, the hellbender in North America, and the giant Chinese and Japanese varieties. These species face challenges like urban sprawl, the damming of their native river homes, and climate change, to name but a few. We also learned that after the execution of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, it was less than 2 weeks before the king married his third wife, Jane Seymour. Perhaps that's new information we're only just learning now, but either way, they're three people who were in evolutionary deep past, also amphibians. Thank you, Mizuki, for sharing your insights. It's thanks to the research of people like him that we're better able to understand the challenges amphibians face, so that we can protect them. Thank you, Damon McMillan, for the music. Thank you for listening. If you liked today's episode, it would be greatly appreciated if you could leave a generous 5-star rating. This will only take a few hours or days of your time. Oh, and don't forget, if you want to see the visual companion to today's episode, you can find it at Nature Disturbed on Instagram. I shall end now with a short poem. This one's called The Master's Den. In the clear and crystal waters, where the cool stream shall meander, down a mountainside, it's here we'll find the Japanese giant salamander, commander of the waterways, a rock or stone at gander. Heavy folds its body holds, the species known as Andreas japonicus, are known as thus, the wondrous giant pepperfish, once considered a delicacy. From what I hear, it's heavenish. But if you have to find it, go find it in the forest. They're spirits of the wild, not dinner, although I'm no folklorist. Sparkling runoff, fresh and clean, heads downhill through the trees, running over pebbles round as it hurtles towards the seas. A severed arm, a stack of bones, a fish head trapped between two stones, the entrance to the master's den, an empty crevice. Why? And then, further down in the stream, fizzling and bubbling, fighting for a female, male bodies muddling, writhing and entangling, risking life and limb. The female at the centre, while the winner, she'll choose him to be her children's father, hence all of this palaver. And salamander babies aren't called tadpoles, they're called larvae. And the larvae will grow faster. With protection, the den master will shield them from catastrophe, and he'll ward off all disaster. In the clear and crystal waters where the cool streams shall meander, down a mountainside, it's here we find the Japanese giant salamander.